Best Rangers podcast in town. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. We scream about the Rangers so that you don't have to. This is episode 56, live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and we're available wherever you get your podcasts as well. It's draft season, it's trade season, it's also award season, and also insiders begging for social media attention season, Nick.
Hey man, like my status for truth isn't a rate. That's all we're doing at this point. Like, you and I make fun of these guys pretty much every single week because of how stupid they look. Like, frankly, like tweeting one end of a trade. Okay, Schefter, Woj, Sham, they do that. They treat the one side, the big name, going the one direction. Like today, Taylor Hall going to Chicago. Okay, I understand that. But to do things like Boston with increased flexibility, we'll see what they do next. That is not news. That is you.
It's a word salad.
Exactly. That is assuming that you are going to get additional news, but because you don't have anything to say, you've got to do the Anthony Jeselnik. Don't forget about me. I'm important too. Right. I know there's something important going on. There's news happening right now, but don't forget about me. I matter too. That's all we're doing here during this weird flux period between the end of the season and the opening of free agency. Don't forget about me. I'm Elliot Friedman. Don't forget about me. I'm Darren Dreger. Don't forget about me. I'm Frank Saravelli. And it's just, it doesn't help anybody.
No.
That's the biggest reason we harp on this is the entire point of our show here is to give you guys actionable information. So like when the Rangers are emailing you like, hey, do you want to buy season tickets? And you're like, well, the team doesn't seem to be making great decisions. Maybe I will say another season down the road if a plan starts to come together more easily. But for now, I don't think that makes sense based on where the team is going and what they're asking for me to pay. That's ultimately the job of people who are doing sports media content is to try and make you smarter so you don't waste your money and your time. Because sports are just a time and money sink. There is no happiness here. The point of watching sports is not to be happy. It is to be sad with other people.
Yeah, well, I tweeted this out, I think it was yesterday or a couple of days ago. I said, if you're an insider that tweets the eyes emoji or any one of coming soon, stay tuned, buckle up.
Poke your eyes out. Every time you tweet the eye emoji, you should get poked in the eye.
Dude. Without like if you say like any number of those like kind of, you know, words that look as if they mean something but don't actually mean anything, and you don't post any more information with those word salads, you're the worst. You are the absolute worst, and you are just fishing for attention. Like if you do the eye emoji, if you do the this team is gonna do something big, stay tuned, and do nothing with that, like that's your whole tweet, you are the worst. Absolute worst. Like that is prime time. You have a fishing pole and you put it out into Twitter and you want someone to bite on it for attention. That's all you're doing, because there's no news for you to be reporting. It's all super vague because you don't have real information. If you did have the information, you would have put it out with that tweet. If you would have said, hey, stay tuned, Taylor Hall might be going to Chicago because Boston is in a cap crunch and they need to move him. Fine. I got no issues with that. But if you tweet eye emoji, stay tuned, this team might do something, you're the absolute worst and I hate you.
You just want attention. That's really all it is. You want attention. And I understand. I am a terminally online addicted person. I need that constant dopamine rush of reading new information, interacting, reading, learning, etc. Going back into that feedback cycle where you're always in a Socratic seminar and there's always people who have things to say about what you had just said. That I understand why insiders operate the way they do, but they have a certain level of responsibility that the rest of us posting dick jokes don't. That's the other part of this here. Some of us are just on the internet hanging out, and then there are people who are supposed to be working on the internet that are also trying to just hang out, which is the issue at hand. We'll transition the conversation a little bit more towards specific examples now, because we're in this weird in-between where this is typically where you start to see the leverage plays work out. You're seeing rumors now that Pierre-Luc Dubois is trying to leverage his way to the Kings as opposed to the Canadiens, which have been out there for a while. Maybe the Sharks are going to try and trade Erik Karlsson. The Flames and Jets are both kind of in situations where a lot of their key players are looking to move on, and they kind of hold a lot of the chips to get this offseason moving. It was kind of floated out there that maybe the Predators would listen on UC Saros. There's pieces that are out there, and there's news that's going to happen, but so much of this void right now is just filled with endless chatter, because like we always talk about, it becomes a matter of setting the news agenda for the week. You get the talking heads, the insiders, tweeting into the void. They do their media appearances on podcasts, on radio shows, and they set the news agenda for the week. And then the aggregators pick that, they piff through, then they make the social media stuff, and it trickles its way down. Because we've contentified, which isn't a word yet, but we've contentified journalism. Now. We've contentified journalism to the point where if these guys don't feel like they're putting out tweets every couple hours to keep the news cycle moving, that they're going to get left behind. That, if I don't do this, the other person is. So that's why we get this feedback cycle, and why you get nonsensical ideas like the Rangers trading for Tyler Toffoli or for Blake Wheeler. It's just, we need to say something, otherwise someone else will. It's a need to keep up with the Joneses.
I quote tweeted this yesterday. The worst, one of the worst examples of this, and I mean, everybody, like, in all sports this happens, but the NHL is the most egregious at this by far. Dave Pagnotta yesterday was like, and I'm reading this verbatim, you can go to his Twitter account and you can find this tweet. He says, and I quote, "Florida seems to be exploring the market for their mobile defenseman. Seems like they'll look at UFA crop if something isn't out there via trade." To which I quote tweeted and said, "Yeah, David, those are the two options. Like, what else are they going to do?
They don't have a first-round pick. They can't draft one, so yeah, it has to be free.
I mean, I guess, but like, they probably won't be playing this season right now. Correct. So, okay, David, like, what other option? Are they going to find one off the street? What else are they going to do, David? Let me know." It's like these word salads are so rampant throughout the NHL. Yes, of course, they happen in all sports. Like, you see this in other publications as well. But NHL insiders put these word salads out every day. Every day. That was like, what, 80 characters, 90 characters of nothing. That was nothing. If Florida can't trade for a defenseman, they'll sign one. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. No way. I can't believe that breaking news that you just put out there.
So let's transition this to the Rangers centric, because we've gotten a few little tidbits, a few ideas that are out there. The one I was talking to you about before we started recording is one I want to highlight immensely, because you and I spent the entire regular season saying the Rangers are the most inconsistent team in the league. They don't look well structured. They don't look well coached. They do not look like they practice. Lo and behold, we are confirmed. Our assumptions were confirmed. Multiple people, I want to say Arthur and Vince, and I believe Larry as well, all said, well, under Gallant, the Rangers only would run pretty short practices, 20, 30 minutes. Gallant wanted to get them in and out. You couldn't tell by just watching the team that they did not practice well, because they always looked disjointed and clunky. And it shows just how facetious all of the coach media interaction is during the course of a regular season. Because if that's the case, and we spent the entire season saying, well, they don't look good, and then it takes Gallant being fired for this to be reported, that goes to show you just how disingenuous it all is, because everybody's got to play nice. And then we're not doing journalism at that point. If we're not saying, hey, the team hasn't been consistent all year, they don't practice that hard, and we know because we go to practice, and we only say that once the coach gets fired, what are we doing here? What's the point of going to practice if you're not going to report what you see at practice?
It's all part of the NHL's structure, and this is the way that they want the league to operate. Whereas in other leagues, again, I bring up that I work in NBA media, and the duality of man between the NBA and the NHL and how insiders and reporters do their jobs is so vastly different. Because in the NBA, none of this happens. Yeah, you get a lot of you get softball questions to coaches and all these and players and whatever. But if there's a problem with practice, 8 people are tweeting about it.
We get grainy cell phone video of people getting punched at practice.
That's right. Like, that got leaked. These things don't stay private for long. The NHL wants everything private, and they want only the things that they want out leaked. They want only specific things public. That's why the insiders, granted, now they get they got like beaten by Nashville's Twitter account with the Ryan Johansson trade again. But, their job isn't as easy as somebody in a different league because the NHL wants nothing to do with anybody unless you, A, scratch their back 10 times before they scratch your back once, and two, they don't talk to you. Like, they just do not want to give you any information. They don't want to be buddy with you. They don't want to let you into the club. They don't want anybody else in there. Everybody that's already in there has the lock and has the key, and they want nobody else in there. So for a lot of people, they have to play nice because that's their only way of maybe potentially getting in there one day. So there's no great way to fix that situation unless the NHL just wakes up one day and realizes, oh, maybe we should reevaluate the way that we approach information sharing and our relationships and etc. But until that happens, this is it.
Bro, this is the league run by the guy who says, nah, our fans don't want more detailed information as to why the stat tracking in the NHL isn't good compared to the other sports. This is, then again, we know this. Gary is doing his job. He is the punching bag for the owners, so the owners never get any real heat. It's what they did last week with the what's it called? The warm-up jersey stuff last week that the NHL announced that they're not doing it for any event. So Gary will fall on the sword. He'll be the jackass, and all the owners don't get any questions because no NHL owner ever speaks to the media ever. So Gary falls on the sword. Everybody gets mad for a week, and then we move on. And then when you get to these designated nights that don't have the warm-up jerseys anymore, then you'll have conversations about it again, but no real progress will be made. Okay, real quick, Blake Wheeler, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Been on a steep decline for the better part of 4 seasons. Another guy who does not produce at 5-on-5, is line mate dependent, and has kind of been reputationally questionable as far as like being easy to work with, like to get stripped of the C, to have the coach of the team be like, this environment is way too toxic, I'm quitting last year, which is what Paul Maurice did in December. So like let's I understand the idea that, hey, the Rangers lack leadership, that they need more leadership. I understand that conceptually. You could have picked a different captain.
You need leaders to fill those roles, which Blake Wheeler clearly is not, considering he used to be one, and the team was like, you're not. We're going to give it to somebody else who is.
The only way Blake Wheeler works for me is if it's one of the over 35 contracts and it's really expensive. I'm not trading anything for him. Yep. If the Jets buy him out, okay, we can have a different conversation. Mm-hmm. But I'm not giving up any assets for a guy who, unless the Jets retain salary, I mean, maybe you can make something work where you're sending Gaudreau out, but you still got to make another trade to make that work. I think Wheeler only makes sense as a buyout guy because he's 36 and on the decline, definitely.
If the Rangers want to bring Blake Wheeler in off of a fresh buyout, off of like a 1 year, $1 million prove it deal, we can have that conversation. But if it's via a trade not with a 10-foot pole, if it's anything above,
I'd be fine up to 3. 1 year, $3 million. That's
3.
Fine.
I think 3 is too much considering
he's worth that. He's worth that. The Rangers need right wings. That's the other point.
Listen,
too.
They do. They also need all of the money they can get right now to re-sign their guys. So like all of it depends on the factors at hand. If the Jets want to keep him and find some way to trade for him, I'm hanging up the phone. But if they buy him out, we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, because he's making 8.25 for next year. So even if they retain half, that'd be 4. And at 4, he's not worth it for what he is at this point. And then Tyler Toffoli, too expensive for what the Rangers need. He's an okay player, but if you complain, if the people who complain about Kakko and Lafreniere skating very clearly don't watch Tyler Toffoli play, because he skates like a Scooby-Doo character runs, where his legs churn several times before his legs start moving. That Tyler Toffoli's a really good shooter, a volume shooter, had the best year of his career this year on a Flames team, where he was the only guy who was ever willing to shoot the puck. So from that perspective, I understand why some Ranger fans would be interested in Tyler Toffoli, but he does not drive offense on his own. He is a really poor skater, and frankly, this is a team that needs to get faster, not slower.
I'm not opposed to Toffoli in a vacuum, if only because he actually likes shooting the puck.
Yes.
Which a lot of players on this team don't want to do for whatever reason. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a confidence thing. Maybe it's a structure thing. Maybe, well, structure, the Rangers don't have one, as we've talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks. But like, a lot of the players on this team are like, don't put the puck on the net. So
Nope.
if like he does have bad skating, he's not the best driver of offense, but there is an argument to be made that, hey, the Rangers could buy low, quote unquote, on Tyler Toffoli and bring him in if and only if for his shooting that he loves to do, because he can actually do that. And again, like, there's players like Jacob Trouba on this team that love shooting the puck, never hits the net. So at least Toffoli loves shooting and also can aim. So if nothing else, he does that.
All right, let's get to awards and get everybody out of here. As the thunder and lightning crackle all around, let's see. No, we don't want that one. We want this one. Okay, cool. All right, so I took out the stupid ones. Like, I took out the players MVP because obviously that for us is going to be the same as the Hart. Sure. I took out a few other awards like the what's it called? The King Clancy. I took out the Lady Bing. I took out the ones that, the ones that are judgment calls that, So I started easiest one. This is Calder. The favorite last time I looked was Beniers. I can see an argument for Beniers or Skinner. I feel bad Owen Powers in this group because he had a pretty solid rookie season, but he's definitely going to finish third. If I had to guess, I think Skinner's going to win based on just the paper stats, and it's really hard to be a good rookie goalie, even though he kind of capitulated in the playoffs.
Yeah,
because they're not playoff awards. That's the point we got to emphasize.
I always argue, and the same thing is true in the NBA, because these arguments fizzle out once the playoffs start, and they start to really just create a lot of fuzz around what the actual awards are about. These are regular season awards. So why are we having these award ceremonies after the playoffs? Like, that to me never made any sense. I understand that you want these players there, that you don't want to like break up the playoffs in order to have like Stuart Skinner there before the first round of the playoffs when he has to be somewhere else. I understand that, but the arguments that are made for a lot of these players are completely hazy now. Like, we can't put Stuart Skinner's rookie season into context now because what's in our heads? Oh, he imploded in the playoffs. So, he doesn't deserve it. Like, no, like, you can't, this is about the 82 games that were played before the playoffs. Matty Beniers had a tremendous rookie season.
Yes,
and if I had to give it to one of these three, it would have to be Beniers. Now, Owen Power, solid, was a really solid player. And like you said, it's really, like, it's just unfortunate that Owen Power had a great season, but because Beniers and Skinner are also in this trio, that he's not going to win by default. That's the most unfortunate thing. But Matty Beniers was dominating for like, especially in the second half of the season where he really started to pick up steam and really kind of fit into what Seattle was doing. He was a really solid player. He drove play. He was just an overpowering force. And for Stuart Skinner, yeah, I mean, he had a solid season. He had decent stats and all that. But I think overall, Matty Beniers had the best season. And I feel like I don't know who's going to win because this one's going to be tough. But if I had a vote, it'd probably be for Beniers.
Beniers was great. He was a fantasy darling for me. And the thing that I like is he benefits from playing in the Seattle system, which drives play very well. Seattle outshoots their opponents most nights. So he's got decent play driving numbers in that respect, where he's more often than not going to generate more offense than the other team by default because of who he plays with. But as a rookie coming out of college to play that well, drive play, yeah, I'd be fine with Beniers. I'd be fine with Skinner as well. Either one of those guys. Really, this one, not very contentious. This one, Selke, they should rename it the Bergeron. We don't need to spend a lot of time talking about this. We can talk about like how many Nico Hischier could win down the road, or how impressive it is that Marner as a winger got nominated as a finalist, which doesn't happen all that often. But this is Bergeron's award.
Sure. They're after Bergeron retires, after a few years of a grace period, because they probably won't rename it right after that. But when he graduates, there's going to be like a few years of a buffer. They're just going to rename it to the Bergeron Award, and we'll go from there. I mean, at this point, and I'm not saying Bergeron doesn't deserve the award, because he does, and he's going to win it. it kind of doesn't matter what Hischier and Marner do, if that makes sense. Like what
Yes.
Bergeron is such a good two-way player, and he's gonna have the award renamed after him, anyway. So like it kind of doesn't matter who the finalists are. If he's one of them, he wins. That's it.
Yep. Pretty much. It's a testament to how great he was. Even
Yep.
at 35, 36 years old, easily the best two-way center in hockey and a dominant driving force. And there are a lot of Bruins up for several of these awards. And the context of that is going to get lost on based on how their playoffs went, like you were saying before. But these are regular season awards. They are. And then next up, Coach of the Year. I think Montgomery's going to win this. I'd honestly argue for Dave Haxtell just because what they did year over year is what really impressed me, because they were pretty bad last year. And the jump they made with a few additions like Beniers, like Oliver Bjorkstrand, a really good bounce back year from Vince Dunn. I think that's a testament to Haxtell kind of figuring it out to some degree. Yeah, he has the benefit of having probably the deepest 1 through 12 in the entire league because of the way their roster's set up. But to do what they did, the real improvement year over year, I think is more impressive than the coach who exceeds expectations, who is typically what wins the Coach of the Year award in every league.
One of the things, too, that we with Seattle have to remember is that Philip Grubauer in the inaugural season was just an abomination in net. Yeah. Like he was projected to be a good goalie, and then his entire play, the entire season was atrocious. He bounced back this season, and that was one of the biggest reasons why Seattle started winning games. Hey, when you have a goalie that can actually stop a beach ball, you win more games. What a shocker. So Haxtell has a lot to do with that. I'm not saying anything negative about Haxtell and his job. He was one of the biggest catalysts for their success, but also Philip Grubauer stopping being terrible at hockey. Also, big catalyst in that as well. With Jim Montgomery, I mean, listen, like there were a lot of concerns about this Bruins lineup heading into last season. I don't know if people remember that. Heading into this last season, there were a lot of concerns about how the Bruins were going to do, and then they won all of their games.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting when you think about it in that respect. And we've talked about this a lot in regards to Bruce Cassidy, where like you can be a good coach and you just wear out your welcome. And Montgomery being the fresh voice he was, Krejci came back from playing overseas, which made a real difference. They had one of the best forward groups ever in the modern salary cap era, especially after the deadline. Once they got Hathaway and Bertuzzi in there, that was a really good group, and they played really well. I think Montgomery's going to win because typically the coach who exceeds the expectations the most wins. And usually that's the, whose goalie was better than expected award, which typically is how this award goes. And Lindy Ruff, I have a lot of Devil fan friends. They won in spite of him as opposed to because of him. From all of the people I talk to that are Devils fans, they were all, even after the way the regular season went, even after the way the playoffs went, a lot of them saying, can we get Bruno in here and can they give Lindy Ruff a front office job? Because very clearly, you saw it in the Carolina series where he was just out of his depth. He was just out of his depths against Rod. And that's just a testament to how out of his depth Gerard Gallant was, that the Devils got smoked by the Hurricanes and the Rangers Rangers barely mustered up a fight after game 3.
Don't remind me, man. The wound is still fresh. Yeah. A lot of Devils fans don't like Lindy Ruff. I mean, I as a Rangers fan don't really like Lindy Ruff's coaching style either.
Remember when we were laughing that the Devils hired Lindy Ruff as the coach? Like legitimately, every single Rangers
Well,
fan
the
was
laughter is still there.
Yeah,
like it hasn't went away just because Gerard Gallant can't coach the Rangers like that. Despite them beating the Rangers in the playoff series, it's not because Ruff made these incredible changes that all of a sudden changed the pace of the game. No, the Rangers decided to stop playing hockey. That was kind of it. Yes, the Devils played well, and the especially Hischier and Hughes and all those guys just dominated the Rangers, but it wasn't anything that Lindy Ruff did specifically that altered the course of the series. The Devils just decided to play better, and the Rangers folded like lawn chairs. That's what it was.
Moving right along, this one is interesting to me. I have been firm that I think Sorokin deserves this award. The Islanders are not a good hockey team, as somebody who watched a lot of the Islanders this year, and he single-handedly made them a playoff team. And like, yeah, Olmark had a really good statistical season. He also played behind the best team of the modern era. And Connor Hellebuck, good season. He's had better ones, frankly, to me. I think if you're going to give Hellebuck the award for this year, I think you could argue he probably should have won it 2 years ago as well. He's a good goalie, don't get me wrong. But I think what Sorokin does is just so much better. And the argument for me is rooted in this. I think realistically, if you gave Jeremy Swayman the 52 starts and you gave Olmark the 30 starts, I think Swayman could have given you 85% of what Olmark did. And that's not a knock on Olmark. It's just that the Bruins were the best team in the entire league in the history of the league, at least in the salary cap era. Like, if you put Sorokin on the Bruins, and I know we're starting to get into the weeds when you start doing that, if you put this player on that team conversation.
Sure.
But Sorokin is... in my opinion, he had the best goalie season out of anybody this past year, and the numbers bear that out. That's the other point here is, and yes, there are limitations and things like goals saved above expected in that respect. But Sorokin was so damn good this year, man, and it feels unfair that he's going to get maybe a runners up. Like, he was first in goals saved above expected by 6. Over Saros, who honestly, UC Saros should be a finalist here over probably Connor Hellebuck.
The thing about putting Olmark in the Vezina conversation is that while he played very well, and no one's arguing that,
like I said, he was third.
He was one of the best goalies in the league last season for sure, and no one's arguing against that. The thing about Sorokin is that if you take Ilya Sorokin off the Islanders, they win 3 games. Like, they genuinely win 3 games. If you take Linus Olmark off the Bruins, they still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And like, that to me is the biggest driver of who should win the Vezina trophy. It's, stats are important, et cetera, but which goalie essentially drove the team to success? With Linus Olmark, he played extremely well, and he deserves to be, a runner-up if that's your benchmark. But at the end of the day, if you take Linus Olmark off the team, the Bruins still make the playoffs. Connor Hellebuck had a great season, but ultimately he had better ones, and he was a solid goaltender. But without Sorokin, the Islanders literally win 3 games. They could not do anything without their goaltender. And Varlamov played admirably well in spurts throughout the course of the season, but Ilya Sorokin is their MVP by a million miles. The only reason the Islanders were even remotely near the playoff conversation for much of the season, and he played so well pretty much every time he was in net that, again, if you take him off the team, the Islanders are fighting for Bedard in November. So to me, it's going to be like, I would give it to Sorokin, but knowing the media, it's probably going to be Olmark.
So the stat I'll leave you with is Sorokin played in 62 games this year, and he had 51 goals saved above expected in 62 games. So that's like 0.8 goals saved above expected per game. That is an unreal season.
Yeah.
That you're basically stealing almost a goal a game every single time you go out there. That is otherworldly good. It feels unfair. He's not going to win this award because of the team he plays on, but like you said, if I had a vote easily, I'd be giving it to Sorokin. And then moving right along, this one we won't spend a lot of time on because, frankly, we know Erik Karlsson's winning this award from every straw poll, every bit of common conjecture. First defenseman to break 100 points since the early 90s. I get it from that perspective. But the language of the award is best all-around defenseman. Erik Karlsson is not a great all-around defenseman. Amazing offensive player. We're not arguing that. Offense is inherently more valuable than defense because you can't win 0-0. I understand that. But at some level, if you are getting carte blanche, free reign to do whatever you want as a player, and you're putting up these gaudy counting stats, which he did. 100 points as a defenseman is really impressive. Yossi came close last year. He hit 96, 97, something like that. But to do it on this team that won all of, I want to say the Sharks won like 25 games this year. That tells you how little it mattered. Like, it's great. Yeah. He put together those statistics. It didn't really matter because the team was awful.
We talked about this before the show started, that people are going to give it to Karlsson because they looked at his stat sheet, not because they actually watched him play hockey. Like, the way I'll describe Erik Karlsson is he's a forward that stands on the blue line as opposed to an actual defenseman because he doesn't defend. So giving the like if you want to give the top scoring defenseman a trophy, give him a new trophy. Make a new trophy and make it the Carlson trophy. Make it the whoever you want trophy. And make that trophy all about which defenseman scores the most points, if you want to do that. But the NARS trophy should be about the best overall defenseman in the NHL. As great as Erik Karlsson is offensively, my man's cannot guard a lawn chair. He can't defend anything. Like if you give like a 6-year-old some skates, a stick, and a puck, and say, "Hey, go beat Erik Karlsson," he probably can. Like he can't defend.
All right, let's relax. Let's relax a little bit. You're getting a little disrespectful.
I'm exaggerating a little bit, but and I mean no disrespect.
Into the Stephen A. Smith.
Listen. I mean no disrespect, but it's just like you comparatively to Fox and Makar, Erik Karlsson is a very poor defender. So. Yeah. Cale Makar put up the numbers. Also, he's much better defensively, and we all know how tremendous and fantastic Adam Fox is. So we know that Erik Karlsson is going to win the award, but it's just disingenuous because he's not the best overall defenseman, all-around defenseman in the league this year. And a lot of the writers and everybody who's voting on this award watched 3-4 games of the San Jose Sharks, looked at his stats, and said, "Oh, he got 100 points. He's an Norris winner." As opposed to, all the other aspects that make a defenseman a defenseman.
The language of the award is best all-around defenseman. That is not Erik Karlsson. By definition, it is not. When you are on the ice for that many goals against, and you still you recorded 100 points, and you still finished with a negative goal differential. And yes, plus minus has its flaws. We do not use plus minus by trade, but to put up 100 points and still be that negative, that tells you that something here isn't adding up, and it is the defense. So we've got 2 awards left to get in here. GM of the year I saved towards the end because I think this is an interesting conversation we can kind of have where do you commend guys for more just having a plan and executing it, or for guys being kind of ballsy and like taking risks? Because I kind of feel like Bill Zito is going to win this award based on the Matthew Tkachuk trade. But I think there's a better argument that Jim Nill probably did a better job with the Stars, or even Don Sweeney with the Bruins. Like Sweeney getting Montgomery in there, the trades they made at the deadline. I think there's a better argument. Like Bill Zito, like his solution to the cap crunch was bringing in both Stahl brothers, and sitting Anthony Duclair until they could be cap compliant. Like I understand why people think Bill Zito should win. The Matthew Tkachuk trade it was brave, it was ballsy, and not a lot of GMs in the NHL are brave enough to make that kind of move. But I think what Jim Nill did was a lot more impressive. And yeah, that includes Jim Nill giving Ryan Suter that awful contract and forcing Ryan Suter into the team. That's a real knock against him.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Bill Zito is that, yeah, they made the playoffs, they made the final and all these things, but what in particular did he do that really bolstered their team besides that Tkachuk trade? He continued to play the Stahl brothers, even though they can't play hockey to save their lives at this point of their careers. Like they had prominent roles on this team despite being really bad at their jobs at this stage of their careers, and Bill Zito doing nothing to replace that. Like Bobrovsky went on a 6-week heater and they made the final. That's essentially what drove them to the finals. Like, and Matthew Tkachuk. That's it. So like, with the job that Sweeney did and Jim Nill did, yeah, the Ryan Suter contract from Jim Nill was atrocious, and Ryan Suter can't play hockey anymore, but Jim Nill is paying him as if he can, and that's either hilarious if you're not a Stars fan, or isn't hilarious and sad if you are a Stars fan. So my heart goes out to you, people of Dallas and everybody else that's a Stars fan. But like, at least with Don Sweeney, he did, there were a lot of questions coming in the season of how the Bruins are going to perform. And Don Sweeney, to his credit, he brought Jim Montgomery in. He made a lot of good decisions at the deadline, and he didn't really, get rid of anybody that was an important part of that roster. So you don't win 65 games or however many. It might as well have been all 82 for that matter. If your general manager doesn't make the right decisions. Now, a lot of it is down to luck because the NHL is a luck-based sport. puck luck and all these things. But Don Sweeney did a phenomenal job of putting that roster together, and they clicked so well. The entire season they never looked out of place. I mean, like even they could have won more games towards the end of the season. They were like, whatever, we got it. Like, it's all good. And they started, they lost a few heading into the playoffs. But, like, they were the most dominant team by far throughout the entire season. And that's in no small part to the way that Don Sweeney operated. So, if Zito wins, it wouldn't feel right, considering, like, what did he do specifically to make the Panthers as good as they were up until the final? Now, again, regular season award, I understand that. But I think it's Don Sweeney's award to lose.
This one is curious. This one is one of the few tonight that we don't know who's actually going to win ahead of time. That's what makes it interesting, because most of these, we got a pretty good idea. And obviously, we know who's winning this one too. And we'll take all of 30 seconds to address Connor McDavid. But yeah, special talent, easily the best hockey player on the planet. Anybody who's disingenuously trying to argue Nathan MacKinnon last year or Matthew Tkachuk this year, I get it. Tkachuk was great in the playoffs. Connor McDavid is one of one, an alien. We have seen guys like Matthew Tkachuk before. There are really good annoying power forwards who can generate 100-point seasons. Connor McDavid putting up 150-plus points in this era of the NHL is just, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not replicable. No one else does that, okay? There are guys who can sniff 110, 120. Nobody else in this league is getting to 150. There is not another player in this league that can hit 150 points. There just isn't.
And the fact that the Oilers haven't made the final yet with this man is an atrocity, by the way. For those keeping score at home, the clock is ticking on this man. Like, I don't foresee him like asking for a trade, because that's not how the NHL works. That's not how stars really operate. Maybe if he was an NBA player, maybe he would have been more vocal about it, but it's the NHL, so that's never going to happen. But eventually, there's gonna be hell to pay, because Connor, with a talent that's as one of one as McDavid, there's only so much time before he starts to get angry. And yeah, he's gonna win the Hart Trophy. There's no one's gonna debate that. Now, Pasternak had a tremendous season. Matthew Tkachuk, tremendous season, especially come playoff time. Like, he was annoying. He was a leader. He was one of the biggest reasons the Panthers made the final, for sure. But overall, when you have a player that scores a bajillion points like Connor McDavid does, and you take him off the Oilers, like, are they making the playoffs? I don't think so. So it's another one of those awards where if you take this player off of a team, can they still at least make the playoffs? With McDavid, I mean, I guess you can make the argument for Tkachuk. Like, if you take Tkachuk off of the Panthers, do they make the playoffs?
No.
Yeah, like I would argue no as well. But with McDavid also no, but also he scored 150 points, and also, like, he's a good two-way player. So McDavid.
Yeah, no, that was a real conversation a couple years ago. Would David ever be able to find the defense to complement the offense? And you've seen the commiserate jump in point totals because the defense has gotten better. They have the puck more. They're playing less defense. He's got more opportunities to record points. So yeah, McDavid definitely. The NHL Awards, whatever. I know there will be people kind of paying some attention. It's raining in the Northeast, so baseball's probably going to get rained out. That works in hockey's favor, but it'll be on. I won't be paying that much attention. Frankly, most of these awards, like we said, we know who's going to win already.
Yeah, it's just the Norris one is the one that bothers me the most, because it's not. It really shouldn't be about the points. It should, like, if you want to have that as one of the factors, by all means, but it shouldn't be the one and deciding factor as to who wins the Norris. It really should be about, okay, like, this person was really good offensively, but he couldn't guard a lawn chair. So why is he the best all around defenseman if he can't do half of his job? And also, again, like we talked about, Erik Karlsson scored 100 points. Team didn't win because of it. Still a net negative as a result of all those points. And yeah, I mean, if Erik Karlsson played like half the game and had free reign to do whatever the hell he wanted, so yeah, he's gonna have 100 points. Okay, but that didn't translate to anything. The Sharks still got dumpstered every night. The Sharks were still embarrassed every night. So okay, it's like one of those, Otani tweets. It's like, oh, well, Otani had 5 home runs in that game for the first time since, Tungsten Armo Doyle in 1903 as the Angels lose 10-5. This is the same thing where, well, with Otani, at least like he's phenomenal at everything that he does. With Erik Karlsson, he's great offensively and really miserable defensively, let's say. So he's going to win the Norris, and I don't like it.
Yeah, that one does annoy me, especially because we know how good Adam Fox is because we watch him on a daily
well,
basis.
also really quickly, the Masterton. The Masterton is an award that I like. Like you tweeted about this, and I wholeheartly support it. Why are we making people fight about like their comebacks or their their off ice trials and tribulations? Why is this a contest?
I think you should have a conventional comeback player of the year award for guys coming back from injury. I think that's a little more ethical and because you get awkward situations, man. Like Don Moore lost his wife. And, okay, we're giving him a trophy and making him kind of relive it. Like the idea, I understand. It makes sense. It ties into kind of that work that blue collar working class identity that hockey writers love to talk about hockey players with, that these are more than just athletes, that these are people with a lot of depth, that their stories matter. And I agree, their stories do matter.
There's a way to support these players without having them compete over who suffered the most. Yes. That's what the Masterton Trophy represents. It's like here, first of all, you're making every team nominate somebody. And then you have 3 finalists on top of that. So now you're being like, okay, well, here's 31 players here's 31 players that all suffered. Now you got to pick 3 that suffered more than those 31, and now you got to pick the one that suffered more than those 3. It's like, dude, like there's a way to kind of highlight everybody's from the depths of the earth to, hey, we're back, and our comebacks and how we defeated the issues that have plagued us getting to this point without making it a competition. Why is this a competition? This is the weirdest trophy in hockey, maybe even in sports. Why?
Nah, bro, this is a league that has a trophy for gentlemanly conduct.
I guess, but like it's definitely weird in the sense of we're making struggle a competition. We're making it this who is struggling the most, as opposed to, hey, a bunch of these guys have struggled this year. Let's all commend them for their efforts instead of giving one person a trophy. Like that is very weird to me, and it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's why I tweeted it this morning. Like, we're the 3 finalists are Masterton, NHL. This is terrible radio. I'm sorry. That's winners, not nominees.
I think whoever it is, like it just doesn't feel right. No matter who wins, it doesn't. It's Clayton Keller, Chris Letang, and Alex Stalock.
Yeah, and Letang had a stroke and had his dad die. Like, are we really going to say that's, and he had a great season in the 58, 60 games he played. And we're comparing that to Clayton Keller coming back from injury. And I think,
Alex Stalock, he lost maybe like 2 seasons worth because of long COVID and like all these things. And like he came back. It's like, why are we making Alex Stalock fight Chris Letang for this award instead of just honoring both of them individually?
Yeah.
And Clayton Keller to that extent. Like, why? It feels slimy. Just like we're making this a competition as opposed to, hey, like these are the guys that really deserve honor and recognition for what they did to come back in the sport that they love and that they've trained their entire lives for and given their lives towards. Why not just do that? It's a lot easier.
Yeah, you give 3 guys, you just have them be winners. You don't have to have nominees or whatever. Right. If you want to have every team in the league nominate somebody, like there are years where guys win the award just for being old. Like there have been a few guys who have won it for just being a really old guy in the NHL. Like that's it's great that Yager won it that one year when he was like 41 years old. But like, yeah, in 2016 he won it for just being old.
It's such a strange award.
And then we're comparing that to, like, Carey Price coming back from major injuries,
Right.
Oscar Lindblom coming back from cancer, Bobby Ryan coming back from rehab, Robin Lehner coming back from rehab, Brian Boyle, who had cancer. Oh, yeah, and Jaromir Jagr won it for being old.
Very strange award. They really just got to reconfigure that. Like, if you want to make it the Bill Masterton Award, if you want to keep it the way that it is, and then just have the finalists be co-winners,
yeah, that's fine.
That makes it so much easier than having to make this a whole struggle battle. It feels strange. It feels icky. It feels like the wrong thing to do. Yeah. It's not the Norris of who's the best defenseman. Like, that can be argued objectively and subjectively, all these things. But, like, who struggled the most to win this award? Like, I don't want to have that conversation. That doesn't feel right to me.
Exactly. All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Liberty Blue podcast. We'll be back next week. We'll probably do something over the weekend for free agency if something even moderately interesting happens. There are not a lot of interesting names out there right now. Maybe a trade or something happens. The Rangers maybe get some cap space. They move on from Gaudreau or something like that. Maybe, God forbid, they discuss their captain or someone else so they can get a little more flexibility. But until then, we'll see you guys. Make sure you're subscribed. We're available on all the major podcasting platforms. Follow along on social at Nick Zararis, at Chelny Andrew. We'll see you guys on the timeline. Please don't do anything stupid, Chris Drury. I beg.
Christopher, listen, please. Trade Gaudreau, and then also trade Jacob Trouba. But that's, what that's I'm just a GM